Hello, my name is Shalina Barker, and this is Everybody Has a Story, an oral archive for the Vigo County Public Library. The archive is a program for the NEA Big Read in collaboration with the National Endowment for the Arts and partnership with Arts Midwest. To start things off today, we want to tell you a little bit about the NEA Big Read. It's an initiative that aims to get the entire community reading the same book at the same time. This year's pick is called Sitting Pretty: The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Taussig. It's a memoir that chronicles Taussig's life in a wheelchair. It explores themes of diversity and compassion and encourages everyone to help rewrite the narrative on what it means to live in a disabled body. Today I'm here with Christopher Essex, who's here to talk about his experience. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. How are you?
Hello, Shalina. I'm doing well, and you can just call me Chris. I'm doing well. It's a nice day outside finally. It's not 20 degrees or lower. It's good to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about where you're from? Are you from Terre Haute?
Funny story. I was born in Terre Haute. And then when I was really young, we moved to New York, lived there for a couple years. We moved to Connecticut and then moved back to Terre Haute, lived here till I was maybe in 7th grade. And then I moved to North Carolina for a couple years, South Carolina, and then I went to high school in Michigan. And that's where I spent probably my most time, aside from in Terre Haute. And then I moved back here in 2002-ish. We moved here to help my grandfather, who, at the time he had dementia. And so my dad wanted to move back in the area to help him, and I came with. And I've been here ever since. Terre Haute's my home. I met my wife here. She lived actually in Marshall. But, that kept me in the area, and we both live in Terre Haute now. Been here since.
So first off, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? What is it you like to do?
Okay. Well, I like to hang out with my family, first of all. I have an awesome 9-year-old named Alex. He's so much fun. He's into space. I love hanging out with him and learning new space stuff with him. When I'm not hanging out with my family, I'm a big video game player. I'm just into all kinds of games. Like right now I'm replaying Spider-Man, but like, I love my games, kind of a good little escapism. So, what else? I like audiobooks a whole lot. Like since, we'll talk about this later, we can, but like, since everything happened with my health, I have a hard time reading sometimes, like where I'm looking at a page and reading. And so, I like audiobooks because I can like do other stuff, and I can be cleaning or whatever while I'm listening to it. And I would say those are the main things that I'm into.
Let's talk a little bit about what brings you here today to this project.
It's a fun story. So, by fun, I say that sarcastically. Okay. So it all started with me running. True story. I was getting into running. I was going to the gym. And I'm diabetic. Okay. So like my feet have always been bad. But I got like a little blister on my foot, and that was causing a problem. So they put me in a surgical shoe to let that heal. Well, I have what's called neuropathy. So that's when you can't really feel your feet. And so one night I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and, I rolled my ankle, and I'm talking about like my ankle was like the bone was shattered, but I didn't know I did. So I was walking back to the bed from the bathroom, and I was wondering why I couldn't walk. Like I was like, anytime I put my foot down, it's just not working. So the next day, I made it to the bed and went back to sleep. The next day, my wife woke up and saw like blood all over the floor. Like, it trailed to the bathroom and back. It was bad. So we were like, what the heck? And at the time I had home nursing. And so she came and they were looking at it, and she's like, yeah, you need to get to the hospital now. So I went in there, they tried to set it, didn't work. So my doctor put like a metal rod in it to try to stabilize the ankle because the bone just wasn't going to fix itself. Well, that metal rod got infected inside my leg. And so to salvage anything, he's like, we're going to need to amputate below the knee. And so, that was tough. At first, I had a hard time with that, but I was told below the knee amputations are easier than above the knee amputations because all it is wearing a prosthetic on the below the knee and it just works the same way. So I did that. I was wearing a prosthetic and I was having a pretty easy time with it, really. And then, so the surgical site for that amputation got infected really badly. So I went into septic shock. And I got sent to the hospital, I drove myself to the hospital, and I don't remember any of this. But I coded, my heart stopped 8 times in 2 days. And I was in a coma for like 2 weeks. And I had a heart attack and a stroke because of all the stress that my body was in. And on top of that, my kidneys stopped working. Well, I woke up from that coma, and they had to because of the septic shock, because of the sepsis, they had to amputate above the knee. So, I woke up confused, but like, they were like, you're alive, but we had to amputate above the knee. And so that was a whole new set of challenges for me because, you don't think about how much having a knee can help because if you have a knee, you can crawl, like you can crawl to like, it's like, okay, that's no big deal if you're not wearing your leg. But when you don't have a knee and you just have a stump there, it's not that you can't do that. And so you would, when you try to get anywhere, it just doesn't work. But so I came home after a couple months in the hospital. I was there for like 2 months. And I mean, I was so weak. Like I couldn't sit up on my own. They were like, we need to put you in physical therapy. But at that time I hadn't seen my son for 2 months. This was in 2022. So COVID was still hot and heavy. And so they had all kinds of restrictions at the hospital.
So it probably made things a lot more challenging.
It did. And so like I could see my son on FaceTime. And so at the time, though, my son lives with autism and ADHD, and he was undiagnosed then. And so he was a challenge at school, and he was, everywhere. We were my wife was having a hard time with him. And so he wouldn't even FaceTime with me, is why I'm saying. So, I was like, I need to get home from the hospital as soon as I can. And just so you know, he's since been taken care of. We got him an ABA. He's doing awesome. But so got home. I couldn't even sit up. I couldn't get to the bathroom by myself. I had to go to the bathroom in a urinal laying down there. And that's number 1 and number 2. And that's stuff that you don't think about whenever, you're in that state. It's tough. It was just a challenge like that. It was really hard at first.
So I imagine that when you got your prosthetic, you had to relearn to do a lot of things.
Well, before I could get my prosthetic, so I got a prosthetic for above the knee a little later on, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But while I was still learning, there's a lot of things that you take for granted when you have 2 legs, or even a leg and a knee. I mean, like, it's the little things. It's like grabbing something from the cabinet. And early on, I couldn't even stand up on my left leg. So like I had to have my wife come to the kitchen to grab me stuff from like the upper part of the cabinet. And I hate that because I've always been the kind of person that doesn't like to ask for help and I want to be independent. And, having somebody help you like that, it just feels like crap at first. You feel useless and you feel like, you're letting people down. And I felt that way, especially having a kid, you felt like you're letting them down. But, so like, I mean, things that you don't think about, like getting in the shower. I mean, like you just take, getting in the showers, like we had to be like, how am I going to do this? Because I mean, I'm a tall guy. I'm not a little guy. So it's not like I can just take baths. And so, we have a regular sized bathtub. And, so taking a shower, we had to get one of those shower bench things for me to sit on while I take a shower. But then, I did get a prosthetic. And it was above the knee prosthetic, which those are hard. They're really hard to use. Because if you think about when you walk, your knee just kind of naturally moves. You don't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. But when you have a prosthetic, it's like you have to do a specific motion to get the knee to move. And so like I had a really hard time getting that down at first. And I would say, right now I'd still have a hard time. But I was trying, and I got into that nice prosthetic, but it was expensive too.
Which comes with its own set of challenges.
Yeah, the cost. And I mean, yeah, that's something you would probably think about. That's not something I was going to say. That's not something you wouldn't think about, but that is something you probably would think about. But like dealing with insurance, you know how it is. It's a hot mess. You have to fight everything and get prior authorizations and just like blah blah blah. So yeah, getting all the equipment I needed, that was a challenge. From the prosthetic to the wheelchairs to everything, the medicine that I needed. And before you put on a prosthetic, I was wondering this before I got one. You wonder how they stay on your leg. Like, I was like, how does this happen? Like, does it, I just didn't know. So, well, before you even put on the prosthetic, you have to wear what's called a stump shrinker. And so it's something think of like a white sock, and it's tight. So like, it's like really tight around your leg, and it's so they can make the stump of your leg smaller because they want it to shrink down to a good size. And in theory, it stays that size when you start wearing your prosthetic. So that takes like a month, and then they fit you for the leg. So basically they take a casting, like they do like, I don't know, it's not clay, but like, like whatever they do, it's like a casting, kind of like maybe when you break your arm, like that kind of stuff. And they get the exact shape, and then they order the carbon fiber for the plastic-ish part of the leg. And so the way it sticks in there, which was a mystery to me, is you have to wear like another like rubber, like it covers your stump. I don't want to. It's like the best thing I can describe it as is a sock, but it's like made out of rubber material, and it's got a little pin at the end. And so that pin jams down into the prosthetic leg, and then that's what locks it in. There's another way to do it too, but I like something with suction, but I've never tried that. It's a process to even get it fitted, before you even learn to walk with it.
And I imagine it takes a while for them to make it.
It does. So, well, what's crazy is, they make it. They send a plastic one first because they don't want to make the expensive carbon fiber one if it doesn't fit. So they send a plastic one first, and that takes 2 or 3 weeks. And that's just to make sure the mold fits. And so you put it in, you put the pin in, and just like, okay, that fits, or it's too tight. And guess what? It's going to take another couple weeks for them to send out another plastic mold. But once they get it fitted, then it'll take probably another couple weeks for them to send out the carbon fiber version. And it's like a couple month process.
What are some of the things that you found that you have to do differently just in terms of living day to day?
Well, I mentioned, so like, right now, I'm dealing with a wound on my other foot. Like I said, I have horrible feet. So this thing's not healing. So I've been in a wheelchair for about a year now. And so like day to day, like right now, I can't drive. And then after I went to the hospital, that also affected my vision, that stroke. And so I can't see on my right side. So that also freaks me out for driving. But I was starting to do it. But like after this, like I haven't driven a car in a year. And so like if I go somewhere, it's got to be my wife involved. And that includes doctor's appointments, like going anywhere, going like family's house or whatever. And, the way that I am, I feel bad asking for help still. Like I feel bad saying, hey, you were at work all week, but you want to go somewhere this weekend? So that kind of keeps me at home 90% of the time. And so what's happened with that is I've kind of gotten like anxiety about leaving the house because you feel trapped. But then when you go somewhere, you feel like, okay, everything's scary. And, and it's something you don't think about too. When you're in a wheelchair, you're lower. So you're looking, like if you're in a store, for example, you're looking up at everybody in the store, or you're looking up at like the racks and you feel like you're in a cave or like a tunnel. And so it's like, oh man. And so you feel like down low, and it kind of gives you that claustrophobic feeling. And you always feel like you're going to bump into people. So that's one aspect, is just the driving and getting around. And then another thing that's a challenge, like what's changed my day to day, is you have to, before you go anywhere, you have to make sure it's accessible. Like disabled, handicap. I say handicap. I don't know if that's offensive, but I mean, I am. But you have to make sure it's accessible before you go there. Make sure there's ramps. Make sure there's a way to get up the sidewalk. That's something you don't think about whenever you can walk, is that little curb on the sidewalk. You can't deal with that easily. So you have to make sure there's a ramp up on the sidewalk even. And so, I mean, I've been stuck not being able to go places, where we were planning on going because of that curb. And then there's like, anytime we go somewhere, my wife has to load the wheelchair in the car. And so I have two wheelchairs. I have like a manual wheelchair that you wheel yourself, and then I have a power chair that I use, so I don't have to wheel myself. And it's like, we use that for longer days out or whatever. And then like I mentioned earlier, taking a shower, I've gotten a lot better. It's a lot easier. But it's a challenge at first. Even when I was able to move around, it's still like, okay, how do I want to do this? And so you have to come up with what I call, and I think it was a popular term in COVID, but the new normal. Yeah. And so that new normal is challenging at first. Like, I used to love going hiking with my son. We would go out in the woods and just like explore, and I can't really do that anymore, because even if I take a wheelchair out there, you're going in the dirt and maybe mud and maybe sticks and maybe whatever. You just don't know what you're going to run into. And he loves to explore. So he'll go off the paths everywhere. He likes to look at whatever. And I can't really do that. So if him and I go for walks, we have to stay on like paved areas. And that sucks. That's hard. Yeah. Or like if we're going for walks, he'll cut through the grass. He'll want to cut through somewhere instead of following the road. And it's like, well, crap, I have to go all the way around to catch up with him. So you have to go down to like the end of a street, because it's like maybe down a grass hill. You have to go all the way down to the end of the street and then curve back around, and then you have to find the sidewalk, get on the sidewalk, make your way down there. My chair can, when I'm using the power chair, it can go through grass as long as it's not wet. But if it's wet, you're sinking in and getting stuck. And same with snow. It won't work in snow either. And so that's a big challenge. And I meant, driving, I can't do that. I have a list here because part of that stroke, my memory is just gone at times. There's a lot of challenges.
In terms of where you live, do you feel like Terre Haute, as in general, is equipped for you to help aid you as a disabled person?
I would say Terre Haute's a lot better than I thought it would be. At first I worried a lot about that. So we live in apartments, and we lived upstairs. So we had to move downstairs. Mm-hmm. And God bless my wife. She had to do that by herself while I was in the hospital for that 2 months. She had to help, my brother helped her and other people helped her. But I mean, she did that all without me being involved. But yeah, I think overall in Terre Haute, it's a lot better than I thought it would be. The biggest problem that I ran into, though, is a lot of doors are narrow. So like, you're going through somewhere and you're bumping into doors and you're like, okay, and you have to like line up just perfectly. And so that can be a challenge. Like even going into like the hospital, for example, like, you go into doors there and it's like, you have to line up just right or you're not, the wheels won't fit in. Right. So, yeah, I think Terre Haute for the most part set up pretty well though, and overall.
I mean, I find that really refreshing to hear.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I live just outside of town, so I'm not on the sidewalks very much in town. I know that they've made a big push for like the ramps on the sidewalks for the last couple of years. Like, so like at the end of the streets, like they ramp up onto the sidewalk. And I know there's still places that don't have that yet, but I know they're trying to get better. And I mean, as a disabled person, you really appreciate that effort. And, you feel bad asking for that effort, but when people make that effort, you really appreciate it.
So one of the themes of our big read book, the author Rebecca Taussig, one of the things that she says is, when it comes down to it, we all will be disabled at some point, because when you get older, you get a little restricted. You're not able to do so many things on your own anymore. With that in mind, what would you like people to know about how people respond and react to disabilities?
Well, before I go into that, that's a good point. Like everybody gets, to a factor disabled. And I mean, even like if you think about it, you wear glasses. Yeah. And that's a form of being disabled. If I took your glasses, you would be probably blind. Just like me, I wear glasses too. I'd be blind without them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tool that we both use that we wouldn't be able to live our lives without. And so yeah, I never thought of it that way. But yeah, that's a really good point. What'd you ask me again? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, what would you like people to
Oh, yeah. Okay. At least for me personally, I don't mind if you ask questions. You see a lot of kids staring, and then you hear parents saying, don't do that. You can tell the parents feel bad, and especially with kids, I don't mind at all if a kid wants to ask questions. I like to help people understand. It might give me a little bit of anxiety just because like talking to people kind of freaks me out sometimes, but I don't mind doing it. And so like if a kid's curious, I'm happy to explain it to them and say, look, I'm just like you. I'm just like your dad, or I'm just like, I think the same way, but I just can't do some of the same things. But that doesn't mean you have to treat people like that different. They just need a little extra help. Just like, a lot of people need a little extra help with whatever they're doing. And so my thing is like, if you can teach a kid or even an adult, to be a little bit more understanding and a little bit more tolerant of people with disabilities, it helps everybody. It helps that kid grow up to maybe be a better person, or it helps that adult maybe teach their kid to be a better person, or to teach, or to help the person that might need help. Because I think, and I don't want to speak for everybody with disabilities, but listen to me, I don't like asking for help. So you might see me over there struggling to do something, anything. I don't know. I don't have a good example. Yes, I do. Whenever I was working in building at my work, carrying coffee in. Like I had a cane, when I was learning my prosthetic, and having that cane, trying to carry coffee, a backpack, you have to ask for help. And that's the biggest challenge early on, is asking for help. So I would say offer to help if you see them struggling. Don't feel bad if they say no. Don't feel like you're bugging them. Just like, hey, you good? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But, don't feel bad to ask.
I'm going to take it back to something that you mentioned a little earlier. And you talked about being in the hospital, and you went through, correct me because I do not have the right terminology. You coded a few times.
So yeah, my heart stopped 8 times in 2 days. Yeah, coded is what they call it.
So I think you have some stories that you would like to share regarding that.
I do have some stories, man. Okay. So do you want like the near-death experience story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I've told this story a couple times. And before I go into it, I want to say I don't like to jump to conclusion with anything and connect dots that I can't connect. And I'm not a super religious person either. And I think that, a lot of times when you hear about near-death experiences, people talk about seeing the light and God or Jesus saying, we're not ready for you yet, or whatever. You saw family and then seeing your family. I didn't see any of that. So when I had mine, I saw myself over my bed in the hospital, because I remember thinking, why am I hung up like I'm in a meat locker? And I was like looking down, and I was upside down. And in hindsight now, that was the wires, everything, the IV lines, the ventilator, because I had a ventilator on. But once I was like, and this is one of the times I coded, I'm sure, I was walking through a field. Like, and again, I didn't have 2 legs, but I was walking through a field, and it was so calm and so peaceful, with like green grass that was maybe like knee high, shin high, and perfectly blue skies. And I felt at peace. Like I didn't, it wasn't scary. It wasn't like, where am I at? It was just, it felt right. And I don't remember much after that. Like I just remember walking around. But then the next story, I lived like a whole different life while I was out. And I don't know what I believe here, or what makes me think, what I was seeing or doing, but I lived a different life, and it felt like it was in the 1950s or 40s or something, like, in that era, because I remember like having an old style car. I mean, it wasn't like a Model T, but it was like a car you would see in the 40s or 50s. Wow. And I remember sitting down with a family that's not my family that I have now, and having dinner. Like, you know, and it was like a family style dinner, which is something, again, my family now doesn't do. I mean, we'll have food, maybe watch TV or watch a show, you know. And it felt very, very like classical family kind of vibe. And I remember working at a grocery store. I worked in like a meat locker, not a meat locker, like the deli. The deli, like, you know, but yeah, the butcher, that's what I was looking for. But like where you'd have like meat in the back, like, you know, and it was like old style where like you would carve the meat. I remember that. And like, you know, I'm not a hunter. So like me carving meat is not something I would ever do. And that's not something I would ever think about doing. So, so when I woke up from all this, like when I woke up from the coma, my wife was the first person I saw. And, you know, the first thing I said was Alex, which is my son's name. And because I didn't know for a good 5 minutes what was real and what wasn't. I didn't know if that life I was living in my coma was my real life, or this life that I'm living now is my real life. And so, I mean, if you think about it, 5 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're confused about what reality is, that's a long friggin' time. And there's times when, you know, and it could just like, because I did have a stroke and my memory has gone wonky on me sometimes. But like, I don't remember buildings that were there before all this happened. Like, I'll see a building and I'm like, that wasn't here. And it's like, you know, and I don't mean to get all weird, but it's like, did I shift a little bit to a different timeline or whatever? I mean, it sounds weird. I mean, nobody knows. Because I mean, I love that topic, but I'm very skeptical like that. I don't like to just believe whatever's going on is, you know, I'm not the kind of person that jumped to that conclusion. I mean, with my job, I'm a very fact-based person, and I like to, before I do anything, I like to know, okay, this is what really happened. But like just little things that I've noticed are different. And so I've had people suggest to me that maybe that life I lived it's like a reincarnation thing. I've had some people swear that was the case. Am I ready to jump that far with it? No, but I am ready to say it felt so real, like I was in the right place. I didn't feel like I was out of place there. And so even now, to this day, I'll have times like where I'll I'll wheel into my bedroom and like say the lights are low or even off, but I'll forget where I'm at. So like I'll wheel in there and like I'll be like, where the heck am I? What's going on? And so like I'll look around the room and I'll be like, I don't know what this is. Where am I right now? And I feel like I've slipped out for like 10, 15 seconds, which again is a long time when you're feeling that. Mm-hmm. Like, so in our bedroom, we have a closet and then we have a bathroom right off of our bedroom. And the other day, this is a couple weeks ago, I opened the closet thinking I was going to the bathroom. Like I was that confused about it. And I mean, I snapped right back into it, but it's bizarre.
The human body
it's crazy. You just don't know what's going on.
It's amazing. And people take so much for granted.
They do. And that's, you know, I say that to people. And yeah, you do take so much for granted. Your normal life, what you see as your normal life, might not be your normal life tomorrow. It might be taken away tomorrow. But the way that I look at life is I should be dead after everything I went through. So what I'm living now is bonus. I mean, like, I try to be as positive as I can be. When I went through a big period of like major depression and anxiety, and I'm not gonna lie, there was a period where I didn't want to be alive after all this. I was at home. I was so depressed, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to spend my life like this. And honestly, the only thing that got me through all that was my son. I didn't want to leave my son. So the mental health side of it is tough. And, you know, and that's another thing I advocate for is mental health. And that's another part of it that you don't think about, though, is that mental health side of it. Because, you know, while it is a physical challenge to learn stuff, the mental side of it is maybe even worse. Because the physical side you can learn. I mean, it's a pain in the butt at first, but you can learn it. You can get it down and get a groove going. But the mental side, it takes a lot longer, and it's something that you continuously have to work on.
Has your perspective on mental health changed over the course of what you've experienced?
Absolutely. So there'll be times when I still get down. I go to a psychiatrist, and he's been taking good care of me, and I feel better most of the time, like 99% of the time. But yeah, my perspective on life has changed, not just mental health, but life. So like, before all this happened, you'd get super bummed out. Maybe you have a broke week, and you're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to, I'm not going to be able to buy that new thing this week. I'll have to wait till next week. And you get so upset about that, and it bums you out for a couple days. But now I have the mindset where I'm like, you know what? If it's not going to impact me in a month, if this is something that's not that big of a deal, I'm not going to let it bug me. Now, if it's something that's going to impact you in a month or a year, that's different. But if it's something like, my computer's broke, or just like, it's like, I'll have that fixed in a week or whatever. But, or like the brakes on the car need fixed. That'll be fixed pretty quick. But, and it makes you think more positively like that, and not be so like worried about the small things. Like my dad used to say this when I was little, don't sweat the small stuff. And I thought it was the dumbest thing ever when I was a kid. Yeah. And I just like, dude, be quiet. I don't want to hear this from, and I was like 17 and invincible. And now it's like, yeah, I totally get that. Don't sweat the small stuff.
You never think that other people understand how you're feeling in that moment, so it can be hard to take advice like that.
Yeah, and when you're in high school or when you're a teenager, you're invincible. I mean, the world's not scary, and it's like whatever. But my dad, who he passed away about 15 years ago, had so much wisdom that, like, I look back on and I'm like, oh, it's helped me get through a lot of it. But mental health, I'll advocate for mental health all day. That's something that if anybody, like I always say, if anybody needs to talk, if anybody needs to vent, if anybody needs anything, help find resources, find me on social media. I will be happy to chat with you on Facebook Messenger, just to say, hey, you're not alone. You're really not alone. And that sounds so cliche. You hear that from everybody when they're talking about mental health, and it kind of becomes like static. You're not alone. Yeah, but in that moment, you do feel alone. You feel like nobody understands what you're dealing with. Nobody's going to ever understand. And so you do need that person that says, hey, you really aren't alone, but you're not going to ask. So it's got to be the person that reaches out to you that makes all the difference.
Now that you say that, I feel like sometimes people, the public, people in general, have a hard time reaching out to friends and family members when they think, they may be in need or in need of just a little bit of extra support, or even when it's something as simple as a loved one passed. Like, what do you do? What do you say to that?
Well,
like,
feel awkward asking about it.
I mean, would you encourage people to still reach out in spite of all those concerns?
Absolutely. Even if you say, hey, you doing all right? You want to talk about it? And they'll be like, no, I want to not talk. It's like, fine, okay. Don't bug them. But maybe they're waiting for that person to reach out, and they don't want to ask for help, because that was how I was. You don't want to ask for help. You want to live in your bubble and feel bad for yourself, or feel bad about what you're going through, and just sit in that, because it feels, I don't want to say more comfortable, but it feels like that's what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think you absolutely, especially a loved one or a friend, or even an acquaintance that you might see at work, somebody that you don't know super well, but you know them enough. If you notice that they're extra quiet and they're not normally quiet, you don't have to dig too far. Just like, hey, you doing all right? And maybe that's all I need to like be like, oh, this happened. And maybe they don't dig too far into it or talk too much about it, but they know that this person cares. And that makes all the difference in the world. Just knowing that somebody cares, even if they don't choose to talk to you, or, but just knowing, hey, somebody's checking in on me, and that feels good. And it gives you that hope to be like, all right, I'm not alone. Even though I feel like it, and even though I don't want to talk about it, I'm not alone. And so, yeah, definitely reach out to loved ones or friends or, anybody that you think might be going through something. And that's why I offer myself up to talk to people. It's so important to be that shoulder for somebody.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to talk about or touch on?
I think we've covered a lot of it.
I feel like we did, and some of it popped up just very naturally.
Yeah. I mean, Shalina, we've known each other forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, talking to you is pretty easy. I think if it was somebody else, I might have been a little bit more nervous. But yeah, we go way back. So I mean, crap, you were there when my son was born.
And he's what, 8 now?
9. He just turned 9 like last month.
Yes, because he's a leap year baby. So how old is he actually?
2 and a quarter. So like, and now he's old enough that we can pick on him for it. And he's like, "Oh, be quiet." I mean, I could talk about my son all day. He's such a little space nerd in the best way possible. Like just a really fun story he has, or a fun story about him. So the other day, he comes up, he's like, "Dad, what's your favorite exoplanet?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Jupiter." And he's like, "No, I said exoplanet." And I'm like, "Okay, give me some examples." "Okay, what's your favorite exoplanet in the TRAPPIST system?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, and then he starts listing them off, and this isn't the correct names, but he's like, "Is it T41b, T42b? Is it the one with the ring?" I'm like, and I'm just saying random letters there because I don't remember, but he knows all this stuff, and I think that's autism. Autism is so cool like that because he has this obsession with it in a really cool way, and I love that. I love seeing him learn. I mean, he's the kind of kid that won't sit there and play games. He'll read NASA's website. Like he's tracking the Europa Clipper it's on its way to the moon Europa, and he loves tracking it and seeing where it's at. So yeah, I mean, I'll stop. I could talk about him all day.